Friends, I welcome you to day 2 opening section of our Peace Sharing Forum. I thank you for joining us from different parts of the world. I am delighted to moderate this section on community peace building in unsettled times. Before we proceed, we would like to show a video clip of the work of the Global Peace Foundation in Kaduna State, Nigeria. Our team chose Kaduna State because her various identities are a microcosm of the Nigerian state.
The conflict in Nigeria is unfortunate. The reason is that most of the conflicts, though they may start as economic issues, but they've always ended up as religious issues. Even if they start as political issues, they always end up as religious issues. If they start as communal violence, they still end up as religious issues. So the religious identity has become a very easy tool to manipulate and create tension.
We have been having sectarian violence and crisis since 1980 with the eruption of first ever sectarian violence that erupted in the entire country, Nigeria. Whenever a crisis erupted, it always spilled over to virtually all the nooks and crannies of the country.
Lives have been wasted. It has denied them going to school, denied them economic opportunity because they are fighting. Even structures that were put in place, sometimes during the course of this violence, they have demolished some of those structures. And the same resources that's supposed to be used in improving their lives will go back to rebuilding what they have destroyed. So as co-facilitator of the Global Peace Foundation campaign on One Family on God, we decided to move into those local communities to begin to speak to the people on the need for them to remember that human beings are members of one family under God.
So the mission of our work in the aforementioned areas is to inculcate in people the spirit of oneness, the spirit of the sanctity of the fundamental human rights of all and sundry, regardless of any difference. And it has been yielding substantial beneficial results. Recently, we had general elections in the country. If it were to be in the past, at the slightest provocation, people would have embarked upon killings unnecessarily and also destruction of property. But such has tremendously subsided.
We focus on promoting peace during and after elections. The election people thought was going to be violent. Because of the work we did among Southern Kaduna people, the election came and ended peacefully. There was no one report of violence. We worked with the youth before the election. We had sessions with women. We had sessions with religious leaders. Then we had sessions with community leaders. And we also had another session collectively with the 4 groups.
We have selected targeted groups, the young people, the women, the religious leaders, and the traditional leaders. So we always bring them together because whenever a crisis erupts, the most vulnerable are the women and the children. So that is why we have decided to use the religious leaders, the traditional leaders, the young people and the women to inculcate in themselves the message of oneness of humanity. Human beings generally have got given fundamental human rights which must be sanctified by all and sundry, among which is the freedom to practice the religion one has chosen to be practicing, right to life, right to own property, right to live wherever one wishes.
We need to build capacity of more leaders who will go to rural communities, to churches and mosques, to schools, and teach this message of peace. So why don't we use the money to build capacity of leaders who will reduce the violence through their message, so that we don't even have to support people or do any humanitarian support by buying relief materials. Relief materials should be our last option. Training and sending people to go and preach this message should be our primary responsibility. In Africa, there is this tradition or culture where we are one another keeper. With the fact that we have an extended relationship. Sometimes some people can call you their brother while they have no blood relationship with you. So if we have that, why don't we build on that kind of understanding that we call some people our brothers and really being brothers and protect them? Why don't we begin a system where we will love one another, we will cherish one another, we will celebrate one another, we will defend one another. Our children will grow to see others as part of their human family, not enemies.
Thank you for watching that video clip. Nigeria is facing a lot of social, cultural, and security challenges built around identity fault lines with attendant conflict triggers. The pandemic brought some of these challenges to light as communities scramble to navigate the waters. With the growing population of the youth in various parts of Nigeria, young people's leadership and peace building roles are the focus of this session. Before we proceed, may I invite you to join us in our pre-section poll that appears on your screen. Your participation in this poll is highly appreciated. Thank you for participating in the poll. To discuss this timely and important topic, this morning are distinguished practitioners and experts from different parts of the world. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Daniel Tucker is the West African Project Manager at Conciliation Resources. Dr. Willie Eselebor is a professor at the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies, University of Nigeria, University of Ibadan. Alice Kalbali is the International Program Officer at Peace Direct. And Abdul Ahmed is the Program Manager at Global Peace Foundation. Dear panelists, we are glad to have you this morning. We have also put in the chat box links to the bios of our esteemed panelists. You can go there and read more about them. Thank you. So let's move on to the first question. It is very important to recognize the fact that in Nigeria, the country is facing the challenge of engaging her growing youth population. It is important to know how different groups, organizations are working on addressing youth leadership development with eyes on enhancing community peace building and social cohesion. So let me come to you, Daniel Tucker. How is Conciliation Resources addressing the issue of youth leadership development with eyes on community peace building and social cohesion? Daniel, please.
Hi. So within Nigeria, Conciliation Resources works in two regions of Nigeria, the Middle Belt region and northeastern Nigeria. In the Middle Belt region, there's a lot of intercommunal conflict and herder-farmer related violence. And then in northeast Nigeria, we primarily work on the Boko Haram insurgency. In both contexts, what we found is that youth are at the heart of the violence, whether as victims, perpetrators, or protectors, but that too often they're excluded from the solutions in a highly patriarchal society. And that what we look to do is to deepen their resilience so that they are less prone to falling into violent tendencies. But more importantly, and I think this is where maybe what we as a practice need to do better, is that we also look to unleash their potential to drive forward positive social change. We don't just view youth as potential sources of violence, but actually we see them as potential, the potential architects of peace in the future. So over the course of the last 8 years, we have formed over 28 youth peace coalitions, which we call youth peace platforms, which are across 3 states of Borno, Yobe, and Plateau State. And they're comprised of about 3,000 young people. I think critically for us, one of the key things is that a lot of youth programs around the world, and in Nigeria particularly, they talk about their purpose is to deepen inclusion in peace building practices. However, so often what we see is that they tend to be quite elite level youth, or youth that have relative levels of advantage, relative levels of power. And we put a real emphasis on trying to engage with the young people who are the most excluded and stigmatized within the community, whether it be that they're perpetrators of violence, they are orphans, they're drug and substance abusers, they're engaged in commercial sex work, whatever it is that is a source of their exclusion. We try and work with those people who are the most excluded to try and bring them on board. What we do is that through a very long process of mentoring, capacity building, training, what we try and do is that we try to give them the skills, confidence, and the space to basically take a lead in peace building initiatives. And one of the key things for us is that we need to recognize that the first level for us is a transformation at the individual level, in that a lot of these young people have been experienced this conflict for decades. For many of them, it's the main memory of their life is this conflict situation. And that a lot of the young people talk about is that the conflict happens around them and that they kind of just get caught up in it and that they're passive actors in it. But what we would like to do is to try and get these young people to regain a sense of their own personal agency to bring about change, and to develop this hope for the future, that the situation that they find themselves in now doesn't have to be the long-term future. And then through basically a long-term mentoring and capacity building, as I said, what we try and do is that those young people then have the skills and confidence to actually take the lead themselves. So it's not us coming in with a preordained idea of what the solution is, but instead we support the young people to take ownership of the project. So if you talk to the young people about the work that we do, they would never say it's Conciliation Resources project or that it's our partners project. Instead, that they would say it's about their project and that they're the ones who are driving it forward. And then then also what we do is that then they take the lead in the dialogue processes, and that they develop the capacity to facilitate dialogues. And the initial focus of those dialogues is often on issues of similarity, very similar to the video that you presented beforehand. Rather than having an initial discussion around the sources of difference or the sources of conflict, we try to identify things that within the community unite people, whether it be a positive thing such as their interests, whether it be a negative thing such as a lack of education or a lack of infrastructure support. These are potential sources of issues that can unite potentially divided groups, and they provide the foundation for a much more sustainable relationship going forward, and that they provide the foundation for us to then begin to tackle some of the more controversial issues going forward. There's a lot more, but I'll leave it there because I know we're tight on time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate the work Conciliation Resources is doing in Nigeria. Let me turn to you, Dr. Eselebor. You're a professor at University of Ibadan. What is your institution doing to address youth leadership development with eyes on community peace building and social cohesion in Nigeria? Dr. Eselebor, please.
Reverend Canice, I'd like to let you know that University of Ibadan is the premier university in Nigeria, and we also pioneered the establishment of the Peace and Conflict Studies program in Nigeria. The program is quite old, and we have been able to replicate it in some other universities. We also created the Society for Peace Studies and Practice, which is an arm of the university too. So we want our graduates to be able to practice after the master's program, 24 months. Of course, they will go into field practice. And the human capital that is provided for humanitarian action in the Northeast and some other places are mainly drawn from the University of Ibadan. And I know specifically because of our affiliation with the Society for Peace Studies and Practice, we are able to build capacity for them before they graduate, so that we also let them have the basic skills to practice in the field. The University of Ibadan has been able to participate in a lot of community peace building, especially in the Southwest. And I can also mention the Nigerian Youth for Peace, which is also a body led by the youths themselves. They go into these communities and establish peace hubs in primary schools, secondary schools. And I think it's sustainable because the result is that we now know that incidents of cultism have been reduced in some of these societies that we're looking at. The University of Ibadan is still one of the largest producers of master's, PhD programs, PhD candidates in Nigeria. And this is the critical manpower needed for community peace building. So there are youths, and we try as much as possible to align them, let them go to ECOWAS, the Mediation Facilitation Division, to do internship. And we also allow them to work with interfaith bodies so that the issue of conflict is totally reduced in the society. And we are also in collaboration with some other key agencies. We do a lot of projects at the community level, especially with the farmer headers conflict. And we're also looking at what is even unfolding now, even with non-state armed groups, and which we are working on. And we know quite in Nigeria is troubled at the moment, a lot of conflicts, and it has a lot of unsettled times with kidnapping, armed banditry, and the rest of them, where to some extent we are working mostly in trouble areas, in the Northeast especially. And we have been able to do some research. Apart from that, we also turn out some policy briefs that addresses some of these issues. And we encourage dialogue between conflict actors in Nigeria here. I think we are also having some synergy with the security agencies in terms of adopting some soft approach to some of these problems of settling community conflicts wherever they occur, especially in the northeast and southwest of Nigeria. That much we are doing. So in terms of advocacy, the Society for Peace Studies and Practice does call for annual conference dialogue on some of these thematic issues emerging in our society that has to do with conflict and humanitarian action. We are into quite a number of things, publications and the rest of them. And we also encourage our students to take part in conferences, think tanks, and the rest of them. That's what we are doing presently in Nigeria from the university. So
thank you so much, Dr. Eselebor, for the great work the university is doing, producing leaders who go into the field to transform the society. Let me come to you, Alice. Peace Direct is known around the world. You work in different parts of Africa. What is Peace Direct doing to address the issue of youth leadership development and with eyes on peace building in the communities and social cohesion in these communities?
Well, Peace Direct has been focusing over the past few years on youth peace and the youth peace and security agenda, and on how the UN Resolution 2250 could actually allow for a bigger emphasis on youth leadership at the donor level. So we've been trying to actively support programs promoting youth leadership, either by working directly with locally led organizations, not regarding their age, like the age of their directors, or directly working with youth-led organizations. It's just important to know that at Peace Direct, we don't have any country offices. We establish partnerships, often long-term and not based on project timelines with grassroots organizations, just because we believe that local people at the local level know best how to address the needs of the community and how to respond to these needs. So we're basically the intermediary between donors at the international level and locally led organizations. So in Nigeria, we partner with an organization that is based in Kano, and that works in the north of the country. And this organization is really trying to strengthen community resilience through supporting young men and women that are at risk of joining armed groups. So we've been trying to establish projects with our partners that foster sustainable incomes for these young people who might find appealing the different armed groups in their region because of the economic opportunities that they present. So we're trying to provide them with sustainable income, better integrate them in their communities by making them participate to peace building activities in their communities. And we're also trying to bridge the ethnic and religious divide that can exist. So with our partner organization, we work on different aspects. It's peace through sports, peace through economic empowerment, and peace through strategic engagement with stakeholders at the local level. So young people are engaged in every aspect of this. One second, sorry. I'm not sure that my sound works well. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay. So we have these three branches basically, and young people then, once they create peace clubs where they feel empowered to talk about issues in their community, and where they feel able to find answers for these issues, they then go and speak with local stakeholders, religious leaders, and women, because women are also an important part of our work in northern Nigeria. So they feel more comfortable to engage on several issues, and this helps shift the perception that young people have in Nigeria, and that Zion mentioned, and that was also explaining in the video. So young people are not then seen as only perpetrators of violence, but they can be seen as agents of peace, and they feel more comfortable to promote this peace within their community. Something else, maybe just before I pass on the mic, Peacebuilding is also quite intentional about supporting youth-led organizations. And this means as well providing one big chunk of money, maybe to one hub organization, which will then distribute all the funding to smaller level local groups to create their own peace building projects.
Good. Thank you so much, Alice. We appreciate the work Peace Direct is doing, especially collaborating with local organizations who understand the issues on the ground. Thank you very much. Let me come to you, Abdul. Global Peace Foundation is very strong in the northern part of Nigeria, doing a lot of peace building work. May I ask you to share with us how Global Peace Foundation is addressing the issue of youth leadership development with eyes on peace building and social cohesion? Abdul, please.
Thank you very much for that, Canice. As you have seen in the video, Global Peace Foundation Nigeria has seen so many communities adversely affected by violent conflict in Kaduna State and beyond. In respect to youth leadership development for social cohesion, the organization has been intellectually engaging with youth of diverse ethno-religious background who are between the ages of 18 to 35 in an intensive and serious capacity building workshops and community dialogue meetings with a view to awakening their consciousness and strengthening their capacity to promote peaceful coexistence through culture of peace and tolerance. Through our One Family Under God campaign, the organization has positively transformed thousands of youth in the project selected community to be able to resist any attempt that will trigger communal clashes, address potential issues capable of igniting conflict, and enhance mutual trust and understanding that foster unity and security of life and property. As part of the successes recorded by the Global Peace Foundation Nigeria, as you can see in the video, among the communities that are locally peaceful that we engaged, Mando and Marabarido commemorated their Community Peace Festival in the year 2016, where more than 5,000 community members of diverse religious backgrounds converge each to celebrate their unity in diversity and accept non-violent approach to resolving issues. When the southern Kaduna that was known to be peaceful was inflamed with perennial attacks and counterattacks between Fulani herdsmen and farmers, making the area a dead zone, we equally took our campaign to the various affected chiefdoms and communities. Prior to our intervention, so many chiefdoms were sieged with violence. Several communities were exterminated with colossal loss of life and property. Thousands of people were displaced and taken asylum in the neighboring states. Farmers could hardly access their farms due to the presence of armed herdsmen around the bush. Investors did not longer invest because at any slighted provocation and within a twinkle of an eye, their huge investment would be destroyed or set ablaze. Schools were closed intermittently. Their socio-economic activities were by and large negatively affected, resulting in abject poverty, illiteracy, and famine among the inhabitants in southern Kaduna. But in our quest to liberate the people of southern Kaduna from the web of heinous, dastardly, and persistent attacks and counterattacks, the following steps were taken. First, we mapped out the hotspot areas, the hotspot support communities and children in southern Kaduna. We paid costly visits to the paramount traditional rulers, with a view to getting their buy-in. After which, we conducted conflict and need assessment with a view to understanding the root causes and the dynamics of the conflict, the position, interest, and the social economic needs of the community people before we begin the engagement. After which we facilitated or conducted several shuffle which gave us the opportunity to meet, with the various major stakeholder groups in consultation with a view to, bringing them to a common understanding, and with a view for them to begin to come to.
All right, Abdul, I'll have to ask you to wrap up.
Southern community systems where diverse community stakeholders, converge and because the way forward, which get back to the Southern Communities and Conciliation Committee. So presently, we are trying to launch a program.
Abdul, I'm afraid we have to stop you there so that we can move to the next question. Hello, Abdul. We have to move to the next question, please. In Nigeria, particularly, religion has often been weaponized as the major trigger of conflict. I don't know how, with your experience in Nigeria over the years, do you think this assessment provides the true picture of the situation in Nigeria? Is religion the victim, the culprit, the cause, the trigger of conflict in Nigeria? I want to start with you again, Daniel, in 3 minutes, please.
Well, that's a big topic to discuss in 3 minutes.
I know.
So I would say it's very complex, because I would agree entirely with the notion that religion isn't the cause of the conflict in the vast majority of cases, and that what we've seen is that religion has been religion and also other identity aspects, whether it be an ethnic identity as well, have been instrumentalized by traditional political and religious elites for personal gain and also political expediency to try and increase their support base, basically. And that's been going on for so long that now religion has become a very important issue, because people assume that religion is the cause of conflict. So, for example, in the place we work, one of the young people talked about how before the project, he would kill every Christian that he saw. That was his intention. He didn't see what was the purpose of a Christian being alive, because he'd been grown up for so long to be sensitized that Christians were the other, were the primary enemy and things like this. But the root cause of the conflict and the root cause of the tension between is often not religion. It could be, for example, in the herder-farmer violence, let's focus on that for a second. At its core, it's a resource-based conflict over increasingly competition over access to water, land, resources, all of these things. And that due to various different things such as population growth, changing vegetation patterns, changing farming practices, growing price of cattle, all of this has increased the level of competition, and also climate change has increased the level of competition for those resources. However, just because the Fulani pastoralists, who are the majority of herders, are Muslim, and that the majority of farmers are Christian, there's become this simplification that inherently it's a Muslim-Christian conflict, when actually that doesn't go anywhere near far enough to capture the complexities and the nuances of the violence. So there are, for example, the majority of herders also participate in farming practices. The majority of farmers also have cattle or other forms of livestock. There are people in farming communities who are religiously Muslim. There are people who are herders who are religiously Christian. However, because of the way that it's been weaponized, and because of the way that the rhetoric in the political spheres and also the media has been generated, there has become this simplification and condensation to be that it's inherently Muslim versus a Christian conflict. And as soon as we go in to try and tackle the issue with that understanding and with that conceptualization, all you're going to do is reinforce these issues and reinforce the problems, and you won't be able to solve the solution, to find a sustainable solution, because ultimately you're trying to solve something that isn't the main source of the problem. I'll stop there because I'm sure other people have a lot to add. But yeah, I could carry on again.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And thank you for helping us understand that we need to dig deeper to understand the underlying issues and not just to be simplistic about the role of religion in conflict in Nigeria. Let me direct our question again to Dr. Willie Eselebor. Dr. Willie Eselebor, do you think with your experience in Nigeria, working in one of the oldest institutions in Nigeria, do you think that the weaponization of religion as the major trigger of conflict is a true assessment, and does that provide a true situation in the Nigerian context?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Reverend Father Canice. I'd like to let you know that it's mixed sort of, and no consistent conflict analysis has ever been carried out. But it will be difficult to assume that religion is one of the major factors. There are some underlying issues. Even at the University of Ibadan, there was problem with hijab at the point in time, and same thing in Kwara State, now Nigeria, where the issue of hijab is being politicized. But one of the earliest known religious riots in Nigeria was that of Maitasini. And again, when Boko Haram started, they claimed they were standing on the pedestrian of religion, but initial attacks were targeted at churches and worship centers, but that has changed a lot now. So previously, ethnicity, religion, they were all tied together, but now we can find some new dynamics in the whole process, which includes kidnapping. They don't care whatever your religion is. The farmer herders conflict is mostly aligned to the religious issue of Muslim or colonization of Nigeria that has to do with Islam or whatever you might call it. But again, the demand from non-state armed groups also is springing up now in Nigeria. And there are so many unsettled issues that we have to look at. We have to look at corruption, marginalization. But one major departure from religion, which we witnessed early in October, is the EndSARS protest. It demonstrated a clear departure from ethno-religious tensions, because traditionally that has been the problem with Nigeria, where religion is being politicized or ethnicity is being whipped up. But we now find youth from all the six geopolitical zones participating in the protest, and it has to do with brutality, impunity of office, oppression. But it goes beyond that. We now find that at the tail end, they were asking for restructuring, or that is why the government said it was going to be a change of government, so they had to clamp down on them. Now, Nigeria boasts of so many ethnic nationalities. And in the absence of consistent policy that brings them together, we'll find this divide, because marginalization, like it happened in the Niger Delta, came in. It was not based on religion. It was purely a resource conflict. So we'll find all these things mixed together. For example, if you look at Jos, Kaduna, and the rest of them, we'll have some crises with indigenous settlers conflicts. Although it has some elements of religious issues, but it was not totally, it has to do with resource and struggle for a lot of things. So Nigeria is complex. We cannot just pin down religion, but religion is a major factor, because even in the former headers conflict now, because most of the Fulanis are Muslims, people tend to leverage on the fact that it's a religious conflict. But we need to do more of thorough analysis to look at these things and know what are the root causes, because on the surface, you might assume it's religion, but some are religious, some are ethnic, some are resource-based. So we need to do thorough analysis to be able to come out with an answer to these problems. Not all are religious. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Eselebor, for that great insight. Let me come to you, Alice, with the same question. You know, Peace Direct, as you noted, works with a lot of other organizations on the ground. Do you think this assessment provides the true situation in Nigeria, weaponizing religion as the major source of conflict?
Well, I would tend to join my two colleagues here, and I do believe that their analysis was very thorough. From our experience in Nigeria and the work we're trying to support there, it is quite clear that Nigeria is a diverse country, and that the mere existence of diverse and ethnic and religious group does not constitute a conflict, but it's more the marginalization of these groups that has led to conflicts, either ethnic or religious conflict over the past years. We, as I mentioned earlier, we work in Kano, and intercommunal conflict between Muslim and Christians, but also indigenous and settlers conflict have been quite recurring and have led to a lot of cases of violence there. So religious extremism and ethnic tension do exist there. However, it seems that religion was used as an element to further divide communities on the longer term. And it has been more efficient than any other form of grievances. So I would say that yes, it is one of the main causes of violence, or one of the main triggers of violence. However, it is a multi-layered conflict that also revolves around land distribution, citizenship, indigenous rights, political interests, and other as well underlying causes of chaos, having all around climate and environment issues, like my colleague have mentioned earlier, and poverty and community allegiance. So I think it's really important to emphasize that it is the accumulation of root causes that remains unaddressed at the state level, but also at the more local level, that led to the situation in which we are now, where you have like conflict after conflict, and it's very hard sometimes to identify which is the real problem and how to address this issue.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Thank you for helping us understand these issues around religion and conflict in Nigeria. Let me come to you, Abdul. The Global Peace Foundation is working in Kaduna State, where we have a lot of religious issues, and sometimes these issues can lead to mistrust, misunderstanding of the situation on the ground. Do you think this assessment that religion is the major trigger of conflict provides the true picture of the situation in Nigeria? Abdul, please.
Well, categorizing religion as the major trigger for Nigerian conflict is complex and difficult, as you earlier mentioned. But religious is used for mobilizing people to participate in conflict. Most conflicts in Nigeria have their motives, and the motives are usually hidden. So religious followers can easily be mobilized with religious dogma, indoctrination, and the emotion of followers on the basis of faith. That is why some political elites in Nigeria are manipulating or using religion as a smoke screen to press home their demands and mobilize the masses in order to election. There are several fundamental factors trigger conflict in Nigeria, as you mentioned, which do not need to rest upon. But despite the fact that there are varieties of dynamic forces that cause conflict in Nigeria, but the intertwined factor of religion and ethnicity makes conflict complex and difficult to be separated from the factors. You know, since the Arab expansion in the 8th century and the European expansion in the 15th century, Nigerians or Africans have almost completely converted from their indigenous traditional religious belief system to that of Christianity and Islam. Hence, the elements that bounded people together were by and large affected, and consequently, you know, disorder became the order of the day, because religious is one of the cornerstones of people's identity. So I think there are several factors that are given that cause violence, which were always given religious connotation.
Okay, thank you so much, Abdul, for that great insight. Let me move quickly to the last question here. Daniel, I'm coming to you now. With your organization's experience in Nigeria, can you provide insight into measurable indicators and outcomes around youth participation in peace building and how it may positively impact the future? And if you may use that opportunity also to give your final thoughts. Thank you, Daniel.
Hi, so again, it's a complex question, but I think that we try and measure a number of different things. The first level is like the transformation of the young people themselves. And so we will have indicators to show both basically a decline in the destructive behavior that maybe increase their vulnerability to getting drawn into violence. And that might be the reduction in reprisal violence, or the number of people who have been demobilized from armed groups, the number of people who have given up drug and substance abuse, these things. But also we look at the transformation of young people in the positive light. So the number of youth engaging across conflict divides, the number of times whether people are comfortable to go to traditionally segregated parts of the community. So a lot of parts of Middle Belt Nigeria, for example, in Jos, it used to be very segregated between ethno-religiously, but are people willing to go into those communities now? Equally, other indicators such as intermarriage is sometimes used as a useful indicator. But also I think it's important when we're talking about youth programming. So often we kind of come through it through the lens of transforming the youth themselves, but that what we also like to do or have a focus on in our work is that we need to measure and have a concerted effort to shift and transform the society's perception of young people and the way that society perceives young people. So we also look at the way and try and get measures around the language that the community use when they're referring to young people. Are they referring to young people as idle? Are they referring to young people as troublemakers, as violent, as the source of the problems? Or do they actually start referring to them in meetings in a more positive light, where they're talking about their potential and how they're the future and all of these things? So it's about measuring those things. And then also beyond that, we also then look at how horizontal and vertical relationships have been changed. So again, intermarriage is one where the conflicts have declined, and all of those things, and the number of the relationship that the community have with the security officials and things like that. And then a critical one for us as well is that, again, it's kind of like how the pigeonholing of young people onto youth issues. And that what we like to see is that when we think that when our work has been particularly effective is when the wider community view youth as having a legitimate voice on issues within the society as a whole, that they aren't just being restricted to talking about youth issues, but instead they have a legitimate voice to talk about any issue that is in the community because they are members of the community. So it's this widening of the definition of what young people are allowed to engage on is also important. And I just want to reiterate my final thoughts and things like that, is that I really think that youth programming has a huge amount of potential and a huge future in Nigeria, but also in other parts of the world. However, I think as practitioners and also the donor community, we need to be careful about how we frame the work that we're doing. And I think we need to, and this is one of the reasons why I was excited to take part in with the Global Peace Foundation's work, is because I think it's shared with your vision and principles, is that we don't want to problematize young people. And so often we see calls for proposals, and the programming is framing young people as the source of the violence, or that it's framed around toxic masculinity or toxic youth masculinity and all of these things. But that actually what we need to be doing is actually reframing that and trying to sort of go beyond just this resilience narrative, and instead actually emphasizing the positive contribution that young people have and the creative solutions that they have. Because in the context where we work and in the communities we work, there have been these conflicts and these tensions that have been lasting for 10 years, 20 years. And it's actually only until these youth groups have come and got involved in it that they've begun to resolve some of these issues. So young people have a huge amount of potential and a huge amount of creativity. So we just need to move beyond this negative framing of young people. And
thank you so much, Daniel. Alice, the same question. Can you give us, with the experience your organization has in Nigeria, some measurable indicators and outcomes, and give your final thought at the same time? Thank you.
Of course, I'm going to be super concise because we, Peace Direct and Conciliation Resources, have very similar approaches when it comes to measuring youth participation in peace building and how they positively have an impact in their communities. So indeed, we also try to measure perception of young people of themselves and the perception that the community have of them before and after the project is being implemented. So when we do projects around economic development and training around leadership and conflict resolution, we try to measure at the end of the project, 6 months after the project has been implemented, whether or not the income that young people has increased over the long term, because we know that economic deprivation is one of the reason why some young people tend to join armed groups, right? So we're really trying to make sure that they have an opportunity on the long term to be able to support themselves and support their families economically. So after we measure that, we also try to see whether or not by being trained with people from different communities, ethnic communities, or religious ones, whether or not their perceptions of the other person has changed, whether or not friendships have been created, and whether or not new alliances were created at the end of the project. So we have these aspects, and on another branch of our project, we also try to see whether or not by being involved in peace clubs, by debating around issues of peace, and by being involved in town hall meetings with important stakeholders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, whether or not young people feel comfortable to speak about certain issues, and whether or not these leaders and the communities change the way they see them. So not as much as perpetrators of violence, but as agents of peace. So similar to Conciliation Resources, we, at the end of the project, we tend to hear that, oh, well, young people, we understand that now they are leaders of tomorrow. They are the cornerstone of our communities, and they will define, they will be the greatness of our countries later on. So we see a change of the way they are being seen, which is very important. So it's a mix between quantitative and qualitative indicators. Something else that I want to say before my final words is that we're trying to shift away from very traditional measurements of peace building efforts to make sure that actually outcomes are being defined by the communities themselves, by young people themselves, because international communities should not be the one defining what success looks like. It should be communities themselves. So we're really trying to do that. To wrap up a little bit this session, that was really interesting for me, and that in which I learned quite a lot about Nigeria, actually. Even if I've been working on West Africa for quite a while, I do want to reiterate the importance of engaging young people in peace building efforts. It cannot be emphasized enough. It's all the projects that we've worked on over the past years have demonstrated how young people, when being supported and encouraged, can become great ambassadors for peace within their communities. And also, I do want to say that the international community needs to focus a bit more on community ownership, because we want products to be sustainable. It then cannot be sustainable if the communities are not being involved in the formulation of the project, in implementation of the project, in their monitoring. Like this is an illusion, in my opinion. So I really hope that in Nigeria and in any other context, the international community will take this into account for future projects.
Thank you so much, Alice, for that great insight. Dr. Eselebor, please, I will ask you to give us your final thoughts briefly at this point as we try to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I do that, I want to appreciate Global Peace Foundation for the wonderful work you are doing. We in the academia, we train and we also build capacity. But there will be a disconnect if there's no empowerment. So youth should no longer be considered as mere beneficiaries. So we must recognize them as future leaders. It begins from there. We also need to recognize them as partners with interests, missions, and they have potentials to grow any nation. Again, from the teaching points of research, curriculum, and training points, we need to align this with community building, community peace building, so that they will have a benefit when they go there to practice. We also need to develop youth-focused led civil society schemes as incubation scheme. I'm giving this to Global Peace Foundation as an assignment, so that it will engender sustainable peace at the end of the day. But finally, I want to say that together we can build a sustainable culture of peace along diverse pathways. So Global Peace Foundation, thank you very much for the opportunity and for the wonderful work you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eselebor. Thank you very much. Abdul, let me come to you. Please give us your final thoughts before we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think the engagement, leadership, and contribution of youth, are critical for a more sustainable, peaceful, and actually a sustainable, peaceful society, because youth act as agents of change if they are given the right opportunity or platform to contribute or exhibit their potential. Therefore, I call on the various NGOs, civil society organizations, peace actors, and other relevant institutions to intensify effort in engaging youth at community level, with a view to promoting peaceful coexistence. So thank you very much for this great opportunity given to us to share and learn from our colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abdul. Dear friends participating in this section, please allow me to introduce another short poll, our post-section poll, and I would humbly ask you to participate in the poll. Your participation will be highly appreciated. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. Let me sincerely thank our esteemed panelists for a very wonderful conversation, discussion, and the way you helped us understand the issues presented in this session. Daniel, thank you very much for the work Conciliation Resources is doing around the world. I want to thank you, Dr. Eselebor, for helping produce leaders, from the academic environment. Alice, we are most grateful to you and Peace Direct for the work you are doing all over the world. Let me sincerely thank Abdul for the work Global Peace Foundation is doing around the world, particularly in Nigeria. You guys have been great. We sincerely thank you. To all our participants this morning, I cannot thank you enough. On behalf of the Global Peace Foundation and our partner, Corporation Ireland, I sincerely thank all of you for participating in this section. Please, let me invite you to save the date for our Global Peace Convention that will come up in August. Kindly save the date. We would like to have all of you, because it's going to be hybrid. We would like you to participate in the Global Peace Foundation Convention in August. And please stay tuned, because we have other interesting sections lined up for today. From me, Reverend Father Canice, Enyiaka, it's thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.